Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to Dumb SEO Questions, episode 290. Each week we meet here to answer the questions asked on the SEO Questions community on Google+, and also the Dumb SEO Questions Facebook group. With us tonight we have Richard Hearn. Richard deals with upper echelon clients around the world. He's based in Thailand, and also he's formerly from Ireland, and you can find him at redcardinal.ie. You're still paying the subs on that one, Richard?
Just about. It's probably nearly dead at this stage.
Tim Capper's parachuted in from somewhere. He's based in Corby, about 100 miles north of London. Tim is a Google top contributor on the Google My Business community. He's also CEO of onlineownership.com, and that's where you can find Tim. All right, we have 18 questions tonight, and let's deal with the first one. And it is a question, a simple one. Does it make a difference from an SEO perspective if it is H1, H2, or H3?
So let me put it this way. If you've taken on a site that's, that has a lot of issues on it, it's a large site, etc., etc. These are one of the things that I would put at my last to do to try and sort out. It's not going to make or break anything off the bat, and it's not going to be any, it's not as if it's going to be a quick win by getting this sorted. If you're starting out with a new site straight off the bat, or you've just taken on one that's it's fairly small and simple, I would get those, that structure sorted within your, on page and within your CSS. But it's not going to make or break anything, and it's not going to take you from something like, page 2 to page 1. I don't think so. I mean, just look at Amazon. It's all multiple H1s on page. The point is you can make $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion a year without having the proper H1 and H2 and H3 structure on a page.
Thank you, Tim. All right, Rahul Patwa, I hope that is what you're looking for. All right, this one from Mark Johnston. And it's titled, what are everyone's thoughts on traffic bots? Are they worthwhile, and does anyone recommend a good one? Apparently a traffic bot is basically a site tester, a stress tester.
I don't know. I'm wondering, is that what they're talking about here? This is a sort of strange question. I don't see any benefit. Could these guys be saying that, like, what's the point in having fake traffic for the sake of it? I mean, are they talking about sending a traffic bot onto the SERPs to try and alter what's going on there?
Yeah. So the whole chain of thought behind this, and you see them selling it on Fiverr and shit like this. Where they'll send you 2,000 visits in a month or something like that. It's literally from traffic bots. They may be on a specific page for a couple of seconds or maybe a bit longer. The whole chain of thought around it is, if I have traffic coming, Google's going to think that my site's relevant, and it's going to bump me up. But that's the chain of thought, but that's an incorrect thought you have in there. And no, I wouldn't recommend trying these out. It's not going to do you any good at all.
Okay, it's unequivocal, Mark Johnston. The thoughts of everybody are stay away. All right, let's head on to the next. This one from Chris Marcus. It's titled Canonical On-Site Search. He said, my client has an e-commerce site. I tried to fix the canonical among other things. I discovered that Google has indexed the URLs that came from searches performed inside the site. Should I put a canonical pointing to the home page for every URL that is produced after someone performs a search for a product or brand on the site? Is this a recommended practice?
The first thing is their search pages shouldn't be getting indexed. Google doesn't want them. They're not going to do any good. There's good answers, I think, on the question, but it's interesting because you have to ask yourself, where is Google finding these URLs in order to crawl and index them? I think Dave Elliott said, block it in robots.txt. If Google is already crawling these, it's probably better just to no index them, as someone else has said. But I would actually let Google keep crawling them, because it could be that people are linking to your search pages, and you can add no index them. Google won't index them, but by allowing them to crawl them, they will pass any value that's been passed through to the rest of your site. So just no index. It's an interesting one. Some sites rely on search for their architecture. I mean, it's just the way some sites work, and they may not actually label it as search, but it's more or less the same thing. But I wouldn't block it in robots. I'd let them crawl, but I'd no index, unless you've got a huge site and you've got problem with crawl budget or something like that. But otherwise, I'd let them crawl and no index.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. I'll move on to the next, and hope that Chris is happy with that. Edward Bergetto Ochoa asks a question: is the SEO in danger with net neutrality ending? He said, I read an article about this. It became true. I don't know. What do you guys think?
What Dave Elliott said. I'm not quite sure how net neutrality is going to impact things. I mean, okay, it could do if speed is a factor, or if there's sort of some web citizens are getting a second class route to something. But Google has peering arrangements everywhere, so like net neutrality isn't going to affect Google. Google's going to be as fast as ever. If some companies or telcos start slowing down Google, well, Google is a big company to push around. So, okay, it could affect small websites. I'm not sure, but I don't think it's going to have much impact. I really don't.
Okay. All right. Let's go to the next. This one from Lauren Miller. Lauren asks the question: can I use open bracket, close bracket, or a full colon in the title? And what is its effect on my SEO? For example, baseball trum. What's a trum? Anyway, open bracket TR3, close brackets dash domain name. I see Lyndon Na has had a comment there. This one must be from Google Plus.
Yeah, that's answered already. I mean, it'll have zero impact, really.
All right, I'll tweet that and we'll move on. This one from Aditya Baba: how to rank for multiple keywords for the same URL. see Stockbridge Trustlow, and I must thank all of the people that answer questions through the week on our Facebook group, Dumb SEO Questions, and also the SEO Questions community on Google+. But Stockbridge said, same as any other way, write good content that accurately and clearly describes the subject you are talking about.
Yeah, that answers it perfectly.
All right, I'll tweet that one. And we'll go to the next. We're powering through. We've got 7 down and 11 to go. Chris Marcus, this time asking a question titled, same company, 2 locations. Should I separate the domain? For a company that rents properties in New York and Europe, the site should be only oneversion.com, or should we make appropriate language variations like .com/TR for Turkey or .com/RO for Romania?
Yeah, second one, definitely. I mean, the idea of keeping it all on under one subfolder on a .com, that doesn't make sense. I mean, there's some good comments in there, like use the regional languages. Yeah, localize, but make sure you localize well. Buy CCTLDs, you can do, but sometimes it's better to stick with a single domain. It depends on who you are. It depends on how you operate. It depends on how much content you have. There's a lot of depends variables in here. Probably better to stick in a single domain. Always try and separate these. You want to display the correct stuff in the correct regions. I mean, for instance, going to a subfolder for each country, then you can geo-target in Google Search Console. You can also use hreflang. There's multiple things you can do here to try and get your content shown in the right country. If you're a smaller site, just stick with a .com and then either go with subdomains, or subfolders are probably better in this case, and a subfolder for each country or region you want to target.
Thank you, Richard. Hey, Google. Okay, right, I've tweeted that one. Let's go to the next. Number 8 on our run list is from Glenn Cooper. He's asked a question that's titled Differences Between 2018 SEO and 2017 SEO Strategies. Nothing new has happened.
I'll tell you one. I mean, it was happening last year, but I think I'll tell you one trend that I think is definitely happening, and I see it because I work a lot with schema. Is this sort of the movement towards to vocal? You know, is to speech, and having things like Speakable, and having text to voice translation, this sort of thing. Podcasts, that's another fairly big area that's going to come in now soon. I think Google is probably actually rendering all the content they have in podcasts to written word. I mean, they're so good at translating, the spoken word to text. I think they're doing that with podcasts. Podcast is a big area for sure. I mean, there's lots of areas. Like if you're a news site, there's a lot of new things in news as well. I mean, there's definitely a lot going on with SEO, I think.
Is there any specific, like converting a podcast to text? That's something that would interest me. I'd love to put text on the dumbseoquestions.com site.
There's a couple of services that do this now. I don't think that they're at the same level as a Google. I mean, you look at Google and you go to YouTube and look at the closed captions. I mean, that's Google adding the closed captions, and they're doing it with a very high accuracy in many cases. There are services where you can just upload a podcast or a sound file, and they will. What's the word? I'm trying to think. I'm having a mental block on the word for this, where it's not translate but transform it to text. And I think that's going to be a big thing now soon. I mean, Google they've launched a new podcast app for Android. They're integrating it into search. you know, there's some pretty funky stuff going on now, and I think they're going to start extracting content from podcasts. So when you ask a question, they're going to be able to actually pinpoint within a podcast where there might be an answer, and they'll be able to actually play that for you. So my guess is that's where they're going with some of this stuff. That makes it interesting if you've got that sort of content, if you've been into podcasts, and there's plenty of podcasts around. So that's an interesting area for SEO. I mean, there's lots of other places. I mean, the whole idea of entity-based computing, you know, it's a big thing. You know, the knowledge graph is growing all the time. They're starting to get much better with figuring out entities on the page. This is partly driven by schema and partly driven by what they're doing on their side. There's plenty of stuff going on. I think, you know, there's always something new. SEO doesn't stand still. So it looks like a stupid question, and the strategies probably haven't really changed, but there's always nuance every year. There's always something different and changed. I mean, all the years I've been doing this, I can tell you for sure, when I look back, like I think I started doing SEO around 2003. And when I think about all the changes that have gone on, there's just always things going on. There's always change. So it's always good to keep an eye on things.
Have you found it the same, Tim? You would have been still in the KGB in 2003, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, I'm just going to ignore that. I don't think there's been any specific change in strategy between 2017 and 2018, especially from a local perspective. However, there are a lot more opportunities in marketing locally over the last year. Google My Business went mental over the last 12 months. You've got, you know, in the direct push to post in your knowledge panel, you've got Google Posts, you've got products you can add now with pricing. You can add events direct into your knowledge panel instantly. You can add a video into posts. You can use event markup on site, which then Google picks up and drags that straight across to your knowledge panel. You can actually add a menu or service to it. They've integrated bookings, direct bookings. So, you know, in terms for local, I wouldn't say the strategy's changed, but there is a massive uptick in opportunities to reach, you know, local clients. So, yeah, you know, you've got to keep on top of what's going on and what they're rolling out and things like that, and sort of adapt it to whatever your particular client is into.
Thank you, Tim.
Near me, sorry. You look at the trending and how many people are looking for something near me. I mean, that's a local area, but like that's okay. It was going on in 2017, but you've got to look and also keep an eye on where the trends are. One of the things that comes to my mind, I don't know why it comes to my mind, but this recent issue, for instance, with Yoast, with the Yoast plugin, where there was some bug in it, and sites losing their rankings. I mean, before now, we always had this idea that, you know, site quality is a factor. You know, all of us remember things like Panda and Penguin and all these other algorithms that are now blended in to the main algorithm. But this thing with Yoast, if you work with any sites that have been affected by this, and it just so happens I work with a site whose rankings tanked, and it looks very much like the Yoast plugin was the reason for it. We've never seen at such scale sites getting affected by having thin and low quality content. And even like I think John Mueller was saying, oh well, you know, I don't expect this would actually have the impact that you're seeing. But we're seeing it on so many sites that chances are we're starting to get a little bit of a glance into the impact that things like site quality are having on your ranking ability. And if you've got a really big site and you've got lots of junk and thin content, you've got to start thinking, well, you know, we're probably been impacted by this. We just don't know it. So site quality is an interesting one to look at. And we've had a little bit of a glimpse into this as a result of the problem with the Yoast plugin, I believe. And I think that we may be looking back at this, and someone might be able to analyze this a bit better. You know, I don't know how they might do it, but we might start to see the real impacts of site quality on ranking. And that's an interesting area.
Yep. Tell me something, Richard, with the Yoast thing.
Yeah.
How did that work?
So what it was doing was there was a setting in Yoast. WordPress by default, when you upload an attachment or an image, they create an URL for that. So it's not just the URL of the image, but they create a page, which is an empty page with just the image. And Yoast previously had a setting that said, right, 404 all my attachment URLs. So it didn't 404 your attachments. It 404'd all these pages that were thin content that held attachments. And when they released a new version, and there was a bug in it that didn't maintain the previous settings. So for sites that had turned these off, when they installed the new version, it suddenly created all these new URLs in their site, which were just attachment URLs. They were a HTML page with maybe an image or a video or whatever it was on them. And it meant that sites were suddenly creating, like if you had a blog and you used a lot of images in every post and you had a reasonable sized blog, it could have been like thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of new URLs with no text content and just an image. And they were submitting these to Google. And the theory goes, although, I mean, you know, I haven't seen anything that says for sure this is what was happening, but the theory goes that Google was seeing all this new content, which they believed was thin and of low quality. And a lot of sites, when I say a lot, you know, a significant number of sites that suffered from this bug saw a reduction in their overall ranking. And the theory is that Google saw this low quality pages and suddenly downranked a whole site or downranked sites for their main search terms. I work with a company in the US, and they saw their rankings decline, and I did some digging, found this issue in Yoast. They installed there's Yoast actually, they released a plugin that tries to fix this. What it does is it changes the response code and all these attachment URLs to 410 gone. It submits a new sitemap to Google with these URLs so that Google starts crawling. So the client I work with, they installed this new plugin. It submitted the sitemap to Google. Google suddenly crawled just like nuts in one single day, like went bananas crawling all these 410s. They're getting all these alerts from Google Search Console saying, yeah, there's an indexation problem. You know, we're finding all these broken links. But that's what it's trying to do. It's trying to take them out so that Google will then take them out of the index, and hopefully sites will regain some of the rankings. But as I said to the client, I said, in my experience looking at this, the speed that you lose rankings is always a hell of a lot quicker than you will ever regain them. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Yoast, whether they come back and they feed back more on this. You know, they did try and fix it quickly, but unfortunately it was sort of like closing the stable door after the horse had bolted. So we'll see. But it's an interesting insight, because if we have a large number of sites that were affected by this, hopefully some of the big data providers will be able to dig into it more and see how high is the correlation between this thin, low quality content and the reduction in rankings, because that will be very interesting to see.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you. I've been puzzling over that ever since I heard about it. Now I know.
I had one. I've got a client who, so under the old Yoast, media attachments or image attachments were no index follow, and then of course when they updated, then it all went tits up. But we probably dropped about 2K in traffic over.
When did it drop, out of curiosity? About when?
Roughly January the 18th.
January.
Yeah. Because this was a new plugin that it was just an update, a regular update to the plugin, the Yoast plugin.
Yeah, but did it not come out a lot later than that? No.
Yeah, but if it all depended. So the way it tends to work is when we always update the plugins religiously.
Yeah.
I haven't got a date when it was actually, but the actual main drop, the height of the drop was February.
Really? Like the client, I thought it was much more recent than that. So I'm not sure when that bug was introduced by Yoast, but I thought it was only introduced in the last couple of months.
So, well,
I'm just saying because what you might be seeing might not be Yoast.
Yeah, but it dropped 2K in traffic for between February and now, and then so when did we update and figure that out that all this crap was there? About a month ago, and it's just completely come back up and back to regular levels.
I don't think that this is the bug, Tim. I think the bug they only released this in May, the plugin that actually screwed up the settings. It was only version 7, yeah, which I think was only released in May or around then. Just so you know, I don't think. I mean, you may be seeing something that's similar to, but I don't think that this is that now I have to go and check, but I think that release is much later.
Oh, that also, I think Yoast also. There was another funny thing I came across. Yoast then created a plugin to help people de-index their media attachments quickly.
Yeah.
The irony which I found the other day when I was looking at someone's site for them is that overrides the actual media setting which you should have to set to yes. So if somebody's updated that plugin and not or added that plugin before they've corrected their setting in Yoast, you're going to have two conflicting things. So you're going to have this other plugin telling Google, to de-index all of this stuff via your search console. However, you haven't specified not to follow these attachments in the first instance. So people need to just, I know it's rare, but if, for example, you've updated and you haven't set your setting in Yoast and then upload this plugin, you're gonna be just on a happy merry-go-round of trying to de-index, index, yeah.
Okay, that's a great chat, guys. That's made a great response that we can put on our Facebook group. All right, let's go to the next. This one from Aman Sharma. It's titled, "Are there any possibilities to rank globally without adding href lang tags or having a ccTLD domain?" Aman said, "Hi all, one of my clients wants to rank globally with a .co.uk domain. Are there any possibilities to rank globally without adding href lang tags or having a ccTLD domain? Though I have seen a website, Sparksit Solution, ranking with a keyword Magento development company in almost all Google domains, .co.uk, .com.de for Germany, .ca for Canada. This website is not using any hreflang tags or ccTLD and still ranking well. Well, how can they be on those domains and not using a ccTLD?
It's a funny one. I don't know whether there's a sort of myth that goes around that you can't rank globally on a ccTLD. If you watch things like cryptocurrencies, a lot of the cryptocurrencies are on .io domains, And .io is a CCTLD. Any domain that uses .ai, so AI is often used for artificial intelligence, but it's a CCTLD. All these, a lot of these companies, they rank globally on CCTLDs. It's not that you can't rank globally on a CCTLD, or that it's easier to rank globally on a .com than it is on a CCTLD. It's just what you do with the domain. There may be cases where having a .com or having a GTLD is better for ranking globally, but I think those are edge cases. I think it all depends on what you do with the domain. They mention a few things. They mix a few things in there, like they say they see the Sparks IT solution ranking, Magento development company. It didn't matter what TLD they used. They probably ranked the site by creating good content or getting lots of great links to their website, and it ranks. This idea, hreflang is something you do when you've got multiple language versions of your site. It's nothing to do with the country or the location.
Totally. I bet they were still searching like on google.de for that English query. Of course, it's an English query. They're going to still appear if they're seen as the authority.
Totally. What was the language in their browser when they did the search? I mean, you go to google.de and you search in your browser setting is for English, and you search in English. Well, they're going to give you a site back. If you do that in German with your browser set to German, you may get different results. But just going back to this, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the TLD you use is probably going to have more of an impact on your branding and how users relate to your business than it is to search in general. It's certainly not as relevant as it was, let's say, 10 years ago with CCTLD. There's a lot of people, a lot of businesses are using these CCTLDs, like I said, .ai, .io, .ly. There's a lot of companies using these sort of, they're sometimes called domain hacks. And it's not a problem. It's all about how you promote your site. What's more important is if you want to rank globally, you've got to localize your content. So you've got to have localized content that can actually be shown to the targeted countries that you're looking at. That's more important. So I'd worry less about your TLD and worry more about the content you use and how you localize.
Yep. Okay. Let me tweet that. Our next question is from Kaldeep Sharma. It's titled Capital Letters Search Query. Kaldeep said, "Hello all. My client is facing a site www issue in google.co.uk. When I type the search query with the site operator for www.blinds4uk.co.uk in Google search engine results pages, the home page is not appearing. But with a capital letter search query, Google is showing the home page. Please let me know why it's happening and what is the solution."
All right, incognito browser first. Now let me just see what he's saying. Google.co.uk, right? So let's just do in lowercase. I'm really getting a VPN, but I'm not going to. So they have no homepage appearing in that. Okay, and then with capitals. It's bizarre. I'm going to give him this much. It is a bizarre. I don't know whether it's having any impact on him, but believe it or not, he's dead right. The homepage comes up for the caps and it doesn't come up for the lowercase. And the results are different also.
But
it's not seeing it as a site search actually, because it's showing other. So Google obviously is case sensitive, which is another interesting thing.
Yeah, I think to do it properly, you've got to be lowercase, don't you?
Yeah, that's what I'm like. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I've never tried it before, so it's never dawned on me that they'd be case sensitive. But it certainly looks like they're case sensitive. Um, it's an interesting one, but I wouldn't necessarily. Well, it's a bit odd that you do a site query and your homepage doesn't come up. I will admit.
Normally, it's some sort of penalty.
What do they have for info? This is the other thing. Info. I'm just wondering. So info is there. So it looks like, although there's no cache coming up for me. They have a cache as it appeared on the 19th of June. Yeah, I'd be inclined to. Now I don't look as like I don't know how the penalties work as well as I used to. Thankfully, I don't have to look at too many of them these days. Thank God. But it could well be. You could be right, Jim. It could be signs of some sort of penalization. I don't know. Because they know about the page. They do have it cached.
Well, I've thrown that into SEMrush, and there's no obvious like drop from some kind of penalty. But if that was only on the homepage, we might not specifically see a drop, would you?
Well, I mean, what they probably want to do is, right, now you have to assume that they're putting up this question here. If they're digging into it, there's a problem, okay? Because you don't just dig into these things unless there is a problem. If they've seen a decline in traffic to the homepage, yeah, they want to just check the dates, see if the dates align with any sort of updates on Google's side. Look to see if they've got any sort of messages to say they have problems. I
will say for a UK blinds company, now without digging into it, I'll have to say 216,000 links. Maybe.
And they have 4,500 pages. I'll tell you what, I think it would be fun to crawl this site. Okay, they seem to have a page for sort of every blind. But I'd still question, could there be this many? And are they doing things like having a page for every color variation or?
Yeah, possibly.
And how good is the content? If you go to one of these pages, like what content is there? If you just look at some of these pages, I would like they're nearly identical. Very, very thin content. Product information, there's a little bit. Does it vary too much? Certainly, the specification doesn't look to vary. There's a little bit of variation in the product information. I wouldn't have that behind tabs, by the way. I'd actually leave it all visible, because they're quite thin. They're thin pages. It's not like you're saving much space, and Google doesn't like stuff hidden behind.
Whoa.
It's a site that strikes me as very thin content.
Yeah, you're right. They've got a different color for all different colors and top blind type. And all
the I've gone onto Rollerblind and like they've got.
Yeah, you see it. You see it as well. Yeah.
Literally, and if you actually scroll down, so it's like the Richmond blue, Richmond light beige, Richmond pebble, every single color. But it gets worse. You scroll down, they've got sale pages all on the oh man.
Yeah, so this is one of the. I mean, it's not an easy thing to actually fix. You know, when you're dealing with something like this, like it's just the nature of the product you're dealing with. So it can be quite difficult to deal with this. Like definitely I would remove all those color variation pages. I would look to try and consolidate this site immensely. I would try and bring it right down and try to build much better content around just individual products, not have a different page for every color variation, etc. Like my guess is, okay, Google has probably crawled or indexed 4,500 pages. My guess is it's probably a lot bigger if you crawl this site. And Google just
so if you scroll down, so I've gone into roller blinds, right? And I've started scrolling down and literally it doesn't stop because they're parallaxing. If you watch it, it's like hashtag page 9, hashtag page 9. I'm trying to literally get to the bottom of this page. I can't get to the bottom of this page.
Yeah, I wonder how they're doing that for Google. I wonder whether they're... Anyway, I mean, like there's probably, there's problems with this site at every level. Like the products, the architecture, like the 200,000 links that you mentioned, like that, there's no way that that is natural, okay? And yeah, I see it just keeps on loading more and more and more. I mean, now I don't know. The architecture might not be so bad. It may actually work differently for Google. They may be doing things in the right way. But definitely they have problems with their products. Jesus, it just keeps going, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'd say this site, there's a bit of me feels sorry for them because if they build a site like this, they're not getting the right advice. And if they've now been hit with some sort of penalties or they have some problems, you know, the chicks are coming home to roost. Like it's not good, you know. I guess this site has got a lot of problems, unfortunately.
Yes, it'd just about be easier rather than try to consolidate it. It's just, I suppose you could do something creative with redirects and content and try and salvage something that way. But they're really, if they already have a penalty, it's probably just as easy to build a new site properly.
Possibly, and as well, like you'd have to start looking at this backlink profile. Like if they've got a lot of really crap links pointing to deep inner pages, they'd be better off rebuilding with new URL structure and just kill off any of these links. Like now, I don't know if that's the case, but I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like you know, having 250,000 backlinks to a site like this, it screams to me that they've been involved in very spammy tactics. I could be wrong, and it's maybe a little bit unfair without looking. But I mean, let's face it, like if you've been long enough in this business, you know what's natural and what's not, and that doesn't sound natural to me. They may just want to rebuild a new site. They may even want to just move domain. You know, who knows? I don't know.
The site doesn't look like it's crashed at all. I mean, it's you know, like with a normal penalty, you get like a real drop. This is pretty, you know, it's had its fluctuations.
But you don't know how long it might have been like it may, what you're seeing now may look normal, but it may actually be already under penalty, everything that you're seeing. We don't know how old this site is. Like the question is, if they built a better architecture, they had better content with less pages, and let's just assume that the backlink profile is a little bit dirty. If it was cleaner, then you have to ask yourself, what traffic should they be doing?
Yeah.
Like definitely, like the good news for them is there's probably potential for them to do better if they get the right type of advice on architecture and content. That's the first port of call, and then the second port of call is getting somebody to really review their site to see could they be under any sort of penalty. Like especially like this 250,000 backlinks is just it's no good. So. And unfortunately, I mean, they're probably not going to be watching this, so they're not going to know. But
you know, it's interesting. So obviously in SEMrush, when you look at like what they've found as organic keywords, obviously it's not going to be all of them, but they normally give you a good, you know, a nice good cross section. what's interesting is that literally the homepage URL only appears for versions of the site's name. So Blinds for You, Blinds for You UK. The rest,
yeah, well, you know what that says? That's
the rest of internal pages. Like, so if somebody searches Roman blinds, it's all the internal pages and things like that. The only time that the site is actually specifically found for anything else is by its name.
Yeah, well, that to me, again, like I say, I'm not that familiar with penalties these days, but that certainly is very reminiscent of penalties of old. And that'd be more like Penguin. That's what happened with Penguin. Like, your site tanked for your money keywords, and it only ranked for your site name.
Yeah. Well, Caldeep, I hope you haven't had a fright from this. I hope you're not responsible for all of this, but your client probably won't see this, but you certainly will, because I'll tag you tomorrow. All right, let's. I'll tweet that and move on. Yeah, poor old Caldeep. He only wanted to know the difference between a case-sensitive site query and not. And we've given him the full serve. Maria Patterson asked the question: handling parameters via Google Search Console versus robots text. Maria said, "This month's dumb SEO question from me. Magento Sites robot text. This allow directive is higher up in the robots text file. Allow asterisk parameter p equals. Then this disallow, and it's the same except that it's followed by asterisk and the ampersand symbol. Can someone educate me on the syntax and hierarchy?"
Well, the syntax
precedence, she asks.
P equals what will it match?
And she also asked at the end, I'm sorry for the bad read, but she said also, would it be better to handle parameters in Google Search Console?
I think this is interesting. I mean, for Magento, if Magento, the default robots.txt has this in, I'm guessing, like, Magento is a pretty big company. They've been around quite a long time. They had problems with SEO a long time ago. I'm sure what they're doing. I would be very surprised if what they're putting in their robots.txt isn't valid and isn't the right thing to do for whatever reason. In general, again, not Magento sites, but in general, I always tell clients, don't use robots.txt for anything unless you absolutely have to, because it's basically telling Google you can't go in there. And from an SEO perspective, it doesn't make sense for your public site. It makes much better sense for you either not to have it there or to use no index so that PageRank can flow through any pages that you don't want indexed. But putting something in robots.txt is like a nuclear option. You lose that page, you lose any links that go to that page from within your site and from outside your site. That PageRank just evaporates. And I can never think of a good reason to do this, because even if you have pages public which you don't want indexed because they have something on them that shouldn't be there, well, then they shouldn't be public. So, but again, coming back to this one, I'm not quite sure. An allow and a disallow. I'm just wondering. So I'd have to go and check myself to see how Google will handle this. Like, I'm a bit surprised by that, really, because that allow could match / anything query string p equals and that could match to something with something after the equals. It could match where there is actually a value. So I'm not quite sure why they're saying P equals star ampersand. That would only match when you have two variables, because the ampersand would be for a second variable in the query string. So it looks like what they're doing is they're disallowing when you have a query string with P equals anything ampersand, which means a second variable. But they're allowing anything with P equals as a single query string variable. That's what it looks like to me. The order of them actually probably doesn't matter as much, because they go down until they match something, and they don't. Do they go any further? It's a good question. I'd have to test it. Do you know what she can do? She can actually test this in Search Console. She can put in a couple of URLs to see what matches and what doesn't, and then you'll see exactly how Google handles this. But if this is in the default Magento robots.txt file, I would not move it, and I would not try to do anything in Google Search Console with this. Leave that be, because they probably have a good reason to have it there.
Thank you, Richard. Anything to add to that? Okay, Google. All right, let's move on. I'll just tweet that.
By the way, just interesting, just looking at some of the answers, there's a couple of the answers in there that they talk about. They say that it's basically saying that it's telling Google it's okay to index a page with a single query variable, but not to index a page with more than one. And that's not correct. Robots.txt does not stop Google from indexing anything. It only stops them from crawling something. And that's why you get results in the SERPs that say, we have no more information about this, learn why. It's because they're not allowed to crawl the page, but they can index the URL, and they can have a title which doesn't come from the page, but maybe comes from the links to the page, or from the URL, or whatever else. People make this mistake. They think that robots.txt stops indexing. It does not. It stops crawling. And it's very important that people understand that distinction.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. Nick Radaman asked a question, and straight away, even the title seems wrong. He said, could this potentially hurt us if I were to suddenly no-follow all of the backlinks? We have a web application that is a content management system that hosts over 1,000 domains. Each page on each domain has links in the header and footer pointing back to our brochure site. Website powered by blah. According to SEMrush, we have tens of thousands of backlinks to the site, but the vast majority are coming from pages on our own server. In your guys' opinion, should I no-follow or alternate? I don't know what he means by that. Alternate these links. Could this potentially hurt us if I were to suddenly no-follow all of these backlinks? The first thing that springs to mind, if you have control of them, they're not really safe backlinks. And a web application that hosts over 1,000 domains, and I suppose, I don't know, I haven't seen them.
But like I've worked with a lot of B2B companies, and I've worked with a lot of big B2B companies like that have SaaS products very similar to this, where, you know, there's people signing up for a product, they get a domain, they just point the domain at the SaaS provider. The SaaS provider provides them with, whether it's a website, like you think of the most basic one or the most obvious one, it's something like WordPress. Okay, WordPress.org, you can have your own domain and point it at their service, and they give you a WordPress blog. And I don't know, but I would imagine that the default themes that come with that probably have powered by WordPress somewhere on them. And I doubt it does too much harm to WordPress website. I mean, it's not, sometimes people say, oh no, Google says don't do this, but actually a lot of the biggest websites and companies in the world are doing this all the time. And it's quite normal. I mean, if you have a SaaS product, it's very normal for you to advertise, it's by, to say the name of the SaaS product somewhere. It's very, very normal. And to me, the question here is, he says, if I no follow all these links, will it hurt us? I'm going to hazard a guess, because it's only an educated guess. My guess is yes, it's going to hurt them a lot if they do this, because it doesn't sound like they're really trying to manipulate things. They're not putting keywords like name of SaaS product or buy SaaS product. They're just having powered by their company name. And at the end of the day, really all that, the signal that that's sending is that, yes, it's powered by this particular company, which is on this particular domain. They're not really trying to, I'd say they did this for marketing and not for SEO. That's my guess. Most companies don't even know about SEO. They know about marketing. So I wouldn't do this unless they think there's a real problem with these links. Like, to me, it's very natural. If you have a SaaS product, this is how they work. This is how they market themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, also, the other thing is, I would say, is it's visible. Their customers know the link is there. If their customers are complaining about it, that might be a little bit different. But it's not the same as all the SSL providers who were actually putting hidden links into their they were telling people to add widgets to their site with hidden links to them, and saying if you didn't put this in, it was against our terms of service and blah blah blah. And I mean, this is natural. I wouldn't remove these unless someone tells him you've got a big problem, you've been penalized, or there's something else. If he removes them, I think he's very quickly going to see that his site is going to lose rankings.
Yeah. So summing up, don't take the links out. Don't no follow them. I don't know what he means by alternate. Is it?
I don't know either, but I think he's probably mixing up. I think he thinks that like having an alternate in there is something akin to no follow. It's not. So I think that's just a mistake on his part.
Yeah, and if he did do that, I think that would just be a red rag to a bull, because then you are, if one's going to say powered by and the other one's going to have you're going to start alternating different anchor text or images going there. That's going to be a problem.
I think what he's saying here is actually using rel alternate. Rel alternate would be more about, here's an alternative URL for this page.
Yeah.
You can use things like, designating your mobile site or your AMP HTML page. So I don't think that it has a different function. It's not going to be anything similar to nofollow. So like I said, I think unless this guy has got a really good reason for wanting to nofollow these, I wouldn't touch them. I think there's nothing wrong with what he's doing.
Okay. So for Nick, the simple answer is don't muck around with these links. Don't no follow them. Your mileage may vary. Don't try this at home. Filmed on a closed track. Seek advice. Okay. All right, I'll tweet that. And we're on. Tanzil Nawaz asks how to block website external links. He said the disavow method is not working for blocking links. Can you suggest another method?
Oh, well, he wants to block Glassdoor review URL from Google. No, unfortunately, it's not possible for you to block someone else's website from Google. That's not the way the internet works.
Yeah. Apparently, I did some checking up because I'd never heard of this Glassdoor before, but it's a site where ex-employees can either praise or bag an ex-employer.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tanzil, we don't really have an answer, do we? Other than no.
There's an answer from someone there, by the way. It's Rebecca Lehman. She says, if someone is lying about your company, ask former employees to rate you to balance it out However, if someone has left you a Glassdoor review that you don't like and your first reaction is, how do I hide this from people? Then you might have bigger problems in the backlink and maybe you should fix them. I think that would be a very good answer.
Yep, that's true. All right, let's tweet that. 4 to go, guys. Chris Marcus asks the question title, is Google Tag Manager an essential skill for SEO? I can't understand the value of it.
I'm not quite sure. Why does he think it's something essential for SEO? It's essential. Is it essential for anything? Well, it's not essential. It's a tool like any other tool. You can live without it or you can use it. But is it an essential skill for SEO? I would say 95% no.
Okay.
What does Tim think?
Pardon?
Yeah. In the scheme of things, in terms of SEO, no, I don't think it's, you know, an essential skill. Is it a valuable tool? Yes, but would it make or break an SEO campaign if I didn't use Tag Manager? None whatsoever.
Okay. Also, pointing out one of our forum heroes, Dave Elliott, put a great answer on this. We thank the people that answer our questions on our communities through the week. All right, let me tweet that. 15, 3 to go, guys. Anoop Canyon asks the best strategy to target other countries from a well-ranked local domain. Anoop said, I have a website that's doing really well in India with the .in domain. It doesn't rank globally. So now I am rolling out the .com version as well to target countries like the USA and the UK. What's the best strategy for this? Should I redirect my .in domain to the .com domain? I have a lot of customers from India and the rankings are pretty good as well. I don't want to lose those. Or should I run 2 different versions, one for India and one for the rest of the world? Thank you.
There's no simple answer to this. It depends on countless things. You know, if he's only thinking about the short term, I would say no, you need to keep the .in. If he's thinking longer term and he's willing to put up with some short term pain at the possibility of having a long term gain, then maybe he wants to consolidate onto a new .com domain. I mean, it depends on so many things. Can he support the .com? Does he have the staff and the resources to build a new site which is on .com that is actually having to deal with multiple locales? It's not a trivial thing to think about or decide. You know, there's part of me says, yeah, if his .in is doing well and he in the long run, he'd be better to have a single domain that targets multiple countries and maybe, you know, have .com/in and redirect his .in domain in. It's not easy to do that. It's a big project. It's a big task. There's so many things you've got to do right and not get wrong for it to succeed. It's a very difficult question to answer. He needs to step back and think about all the repercussions of what he's proposing to do. And, you know, there's some good answers in there, but there's no right answer to this. It just depends on so many variables.
Excellent. Okay, I see Paul Thompson said on the Facebook group, this is a major business strategy decision first, then an SEO question. Business strategy should always drive technical decisions, not the other way around. Making this decision without proper analysis could do you. He says will, but I think it should be could do you serious harm. Anyway, Tim, would you like to add, or Richard?
Just to mention on that one, like, you know, you think about that and it makes sense what he's saying, but there's definitely going to be occasions when the business is technical. You know, it may be that the business derives all of its activity via the websites, and that the website is the product. So I just want to be careful. Like, you have to be a little bit more careful not to assume that the business itself isn't the site. And in that sense, the site may be the product and the site may be the business. So what he said makes sense, especially if you're like an offline business. But if you're an online business, well, some of these considerations are probably what drives business strategy. So there's definitely going to be some cases where that advice doesn't hold up, I think.
Cool. All right, we'll tweet that.
Does Tim have anything on it? No?
Button?
Do you have any thoughts on it, Tim?
No, I think that was handled.
Okay, Tim.
Did I hear you miss, Jim? Did you just say, "Hey Google"?
All right. Marvin Hernandez said, which one of these two helps you rank better? Hello, everyone, he said. I was curious to hear opinions on what might be more important when visitors land on your site, coming off the search engine, between these two choices only as it relates to Google ranking you hire for SEO purposes only. One, having visitors stay longer on the page that they landed on, or two, having visitors click to another page on your site. Of course, both is ideal, but for now, which one would help rankings more of the two options?
None.
You know, it's a great question though, because it could sort of bubble up some other things. You know, you got to start thinking here. The first thing in here is, do we know whether either of these have any impact on ranking? So then you start to ask yourself, well, what do we know about what Google sees? What do we know about what Google uses? I mean, we're starting to see, you know, Chrome has whatever, 55% market penetration globally. And we're starting to see things like the Speed Insight tool, which is giving you information about every page on a website that people visit, based on real data, not funny data from something Google is running, based on real user experience within their version, their Chrome client. And then you start to think, well, where else could Google be using this information? We don't know whether either of those have an explicit impact on ranking. But then you start to say, well, let's think about this a bit more. And you say, well, having visitors stay longer on a page, let's say it's an informational query. They come to the page, they get the information. Why would they click to a second page? So if it's transactional, well, you think, well, then they probably would want to click to a second page, whether it's learn more, add to cart, check out, whatever. One size doesn't fit all here. So it's a good question to create more questions, but it's not a good question to answer.
It's yeah. The thing is, if Google was using it as a ranking factor, they would then also be having to completely and implicitly understand everything on the page, and what they, you know. So if somebody searched for cinema opening times, you know, half the time, you know, if that site actually structured their content properly, there should be a rich answer appearing for that, and no need to even go to the site, because they can just see from a rich answer. So it all depends on the query. What was the query? How is it interpreted?
I mean, the length of time spent on a page. I'm looking for the phone number from a business. I go to Google, I say business name, phone number. They bring me to the contact page. I get the phone number. I might only stay there for 3 seconds, and then I might click the back button. Does that mean that I didn't get what I was looking for, or that I did? Okay, Google is very clever, and I'm sure they can figure out some of these queries. You know, how long should a query take to succeed, for want of a better word? But you know, there's so much nuance to this that you cannot just ask these questions. You've got to dig in, and then you start branching off into different areas. I mean, I think the real answer to this is probably that they're looking, or they're thinking about the wrong things. If they're looking at this, they need to think about what's better for their users. And once they figure out what's better for their users, I reckon Google will probably mimic that as best they can, and Google is damn good at mimicking it. So don't worry so much about this. Do what's right for your users, and that will probably work out well. Like, it's terrible to say this, because this is what Google said for so long, and everyone made fun of them. But at the end of the day, when you start to look at how Google works, they really are trying to give people what they want. It's not always in the best interest of the business. It's more often in the better interest of Google. But from a user perspective, they are trying to give users what they want, and that's what you need to look at. That's the best. I mean, I don't look at a lot of this stuff anymore. I only think about what's good for users a lot of the time. Thank God.
Yeah. I can vouch for that. We have a site, a 10-year-old site that's been built with that philosophy. It's as ugly as hell, but it's just about to turn over in its, I think it's 10th year, 2000 and let me have a look. Where are we? Okay, I can put a graphic on the screen. Here we are. And anyway, it's been built totally with that philosophy. Very little SEO, but these are the stats. Oh, you can see it on the screen. How good is that?
Well done. Yeah.
Yep. And back in 2009, I designed the architecture for that site. I don't do all that much work on it these days, but I planned that site from scratch, and you can see back in 2009 at one stage they were making $0 per month, and now they're up around the 200,000 mark. Yeah, that's my little boast for the day. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, linesman. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next. Antti Matikainen said, I'm looking to update the title, but I'm afraid that the current rank will drop. Antti said, hi guys, what happens to my website homepage? GG rank. What's GG?
Google.
Oh, Google rank. Oh, that's right. That's no. I thought it was ABC on the stock exchange. If I change the current title tag, I'm looking to update the title, but I'm afraid that the current rank will drop. The page is ranked #1 now, brackets company name. So how long does it take to rank on top again after changing the title?
So I don't think changing a title is going to exponentially tank a site at all. You know, you could literally remove the title tag and Google will replace it with titles in the search query for search queries. And you see it all the time with Google actually taking and swapping, but they would ordinarily just show your brand name anyway, or the company name. I don't know. I don't think you're going to go from, you know, you might on a competitive query that's in your title. Let's just say photocopier repair systems. And if you remove photocopier repair systems, which is your core business, out of the title, and just called it repair systems, you may experience, I mean, this would have to be completely tested. You may drop from, you may drop one position where your competitor below you has also got photocopier repair systems in their title but there are so many different factors involved that it's not necessarily going to be a case where you drop one or above one. So, for example, Nike or Reebok or whoever, they could just completely remove their title tags, and Google will just display Nike, the home of running or whatever, based on external information, based on the site, based on how it's been seen and cached and perceived before. It's quite hard to say, will it tank and how long before it regains,
Company name, probably, like, let's run under the assumption that your domain name is also equal to your company name, and that your company name features on all your pages and is mentioned in text on the pages. You could probably remove the company name, as Tim said, entirely from the title tag, and it probably would have zero impact. Can we say that with a very high level of confidence? Probably reasonably high, 90 to 95% confidence that it will have no impact. As with all these things, there are always a chance that we can't see all the variables at play here, so we can't really say, but I think they're fairly safe to do it. Then there's a question, how long it takes to rank on top again after changing the title. I mentioned earlier, in my experience, it's always much quicker to lose your rankings than it is to gain them back. But with something like this, my guess is that if your rankings did decline slightly for your company name because you changed the title, I would say adding it back in as soon as Google recrawls your homepage and sees that you added it back in, I'd be very surprised if you didn't go back up to where you were. I'd be even more surprised if it affected your ranking, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of seen it where in the local space. So for example, a small business, a local business, has gone out and done a few citations. So, for example, they've got a Google My Business page, they've got Facebook, they're probably on Yellow Pages, maybe Yelp, and another one or two. And you see it quite often where the Yelp listing is appearing above their website. So the Yelp is number one and their actual site is number two, primarily because they don't have their company name in the title. The title just still says home. A small 5-page site. Literally just swapping that around tends to pop you your own name, a search query for your, assuming it's unique, pops you right back and above with Yelp. So it all depends what it is, and is it a generic company name? Like, have you included some weird kind of term, EMD, that you're trying to use? There's a lot of different.
I guess that, like the Yelp example, you probably see that happening with sites that also have few or no backlinks. And just getting a couple of decent backlinks, let's say with your company name in it from a supplier or whoever it might be, would probably bump you up over Yelp also. Like, Yelp is a gorilla. Yelp is a hugely authoritative site. They can push around the authority to rank in this way. But they tend to outrank sites that just have zero authority. So again, these are some of the things you need to think about in terms of this particular query from Anti. I think Anti, is that the name? But like I say, I think that they can safely do this, and like the impact will be very short-lived if they see any sort of problems with this.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, guys. Let me go to the next. This one from Max Benz. Are you manually exchanging links, or do you think that's too risky? Max said, hey, everybody, are you... Oh, okay, I've already said that. In this context, he went on to say, manually should mean exchanging links from time to time with websites that are topic-wise related to your site.
I'm getting flashbacks.
Yeah, well, yeah, I realise it's been asked before, but well, okay. My answer would be that I think it's reasonable to, and what I tell my clients with a new site is that they should approach their suppliers and link to their suppliers and give them a link back. Take a link from their suppliers.
And that's perfect advice. I was just thinking the same thing myself. Like if it was a brand new site, I would say, well, depending on what you're selling, let's say you're selling a lot of products from a lot of suppliers. I would look to those suppliers and say, yeah, look, we're selling your products. Is there any way you could just link to our site? We're happy to put up a suppliers page and give you a link back. Is that a link exchange? I mean, yeah, you could argue over the terminology. It probably is, but it's a valid link exchange. I mean, what's wrong with that? You know, it really depends on what they're thinking of doing. Like, if it's, oh, I noticed you had a links page, would you mind like exchanging a link with our links page? Well, yeah, I don't know. The devil is always in the detail with these type of questions, but it does sort of make me feel very old.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it links page because I think if you put up a link exchange, it would be fairly easy for Google to detect. But I think as long as you're under the radar, as long as there's not too many, everything works as long as it's under the radar.
It doesn't. I don't even think it has to be under the radar, right? So, like, I work with some companies that have multiple subsidiaries, and the subsidiaries could be in completely different businesses, and they have completely independent websites. And some of them are very data driven, and there's some crossover between some of the data some of these companies have. And I work with them on strategies of how to interlink these sites in a way that's good for users. Like, I'm bringing the data from one company into the site of another because it's useful there for the users of that site. And this all incorporates links back and forth. In the back of my head, I'm always thinking about SEO. I'm always thinking about search and how search engines will see some of these. But I'm building this for users. It's good for the user experience. But I also know it's going to drive traffic. I don't need to fly under the radar because it's a perfectly valid way to build the user experience. The fact that it just so happens it's good for SEO, well, that's a bonus to me. So it really depends on how you're doing it. I mean, like, that's an extreme case of link exchange. Like, I'm talking about millions of links here. So, you know, it really depends on what you're doing and how you're doing it and who benefits from it. If users benefit from it, well, then there's no reason in the world that any search engine would look at it and go, well, that's not good for us. I think. I'm sure there's probably going to be some exceptions and some people are going to call me out or figure out ways I shouldn't be doing something like this, but there's always going to be valid ways to do this that can benefit users and search at the same time. And that's
and look at the biggest link exchange in the world. I mean, like one of the largest ones out there, TripAdvisor. You know, we hand out you an award, and you put your next little award on your hotel site in the footer, which is, you know, 50 links running back to TripAdvisor, but TripAdvisor's got one page for you, and it's a freaking massive link exchange, left, right, and center. You know, it all depends on how you're doing it, you know.
But I mean, they'll always argue that they're doing that. Like, it's good for the users. The users see this, they're going to trust your hotel more, and they can click on this and they can come to validate this by visiting the TripAdvisor site. So although you can be damn sure that there's an SEO director in TripAdvisor and their parent companies, etc., who's saying, yes, we need to keep doing this, at some point they are also looking at this and going, well, there's a valid reason for us having this. I'm sure it's driven by SEO for a large part, but it's a valid reason to have it there also. So who owns TripAdvisor, by the way?
I don't know.
I always wonder, where is Alistair these days? Because I know he's in Expedia, isn't he?
He's running the whole bang, and
he's living in the States. So Alistair went to Seattle. Is it?
Right.
I think he ended up in Seattle, and Matt Storms ended up in Sydney. I don't think. I think we got fucking robbed.
Alistair has a great mind for the, you can just see he'd fit into the corporate world so well. Like, he just has this analytical mind, that he's thinking about this from much broader perspective, all these problems and all these issues he's looking at. So I'm sure he'll do well.
Yeah, well, I first met Alistair when there was a company here in Australia called Breakfree. And they'd been naughty, and they were under a Google penalty. So Alistair was brought in to clean it up, and sites like us were called in to try and give them bookings, give them visibility on the web, and they were paying huge commissions, and it was just like Christmas every day. But Alistair learnt from that, and his whole strategy from there on was risk averse, and that must be a good one, because now he's running all of those multi-billion-dollar sites.
Yeah, cool. But I'd say it's not stress. I would, like, I mean, personally, I decided a long time ago that I like easy life. And I've worked with some very big companies, but I made the conscious decision, I'll just work for myself. I'll do my 20 hours or so a week. I'll take it easy. I don't need the high life. And I wouldn't fancy the stress of that, though, to be honest, because, imagine what happens when there's a problem. It's at his doorstep. And those travel businesses, they're so dependent on search.
Oh, yeah. Well, about 12 or 18 months ago, I was thinking exactly the same thing when I think it was Expedia tanked. Do you remember? It was big news that they tanked for a while.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they brought him in to fix that, and that's why he got the director job. A bit of luck.
I just they would kill me. It's like I remember listening to some chaps from what's that? It wasn't Money Supermarket. It was, or maybe it was Money Supermarket. One of those sites, and this was when Penguin was still hanging about. So it was about, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years when I went to listen to them. And can you imagine sitting there trying to, I think it was Money Supermarket, on their credit card site, when they were hit with when they were hit with Panda, they were losing £1 million, £1 million a week in sales. Can you imagine the bloke who's explaining to the director that, we built some really dodgy fucking links, and it's going to cost you £1 million a week, and we probably get out of this in about 6 months.
Yeah, but you know what? They were just paying back some of the super normal profits they were making from some of the tactics they were actually using. So it probably balanced itself out, I mean, okay, that's nothing for their shareholders, etc. But, you play with fire, you get burnt. And like I say, they probably generated profits they shouldn't have generated due to some of the tactics they employed. And then they paid for it later. That's generally what happens,
Yeah.
But CEOs aren't going to listen to that, though. They're not going to be so happy. And, boards of directors not going to be so happy with that. That's what I say about the stress levels. Like, poor old Alistair, he's probably not working. He probably doesn't look at a website ever. He probably only looks at reports, has meetings, figures out budgets, and then he has to fix problems as they arise. I'm sure he formulates strategy for them, which is probably the coolest part of his job, I'd say. But like, he probably doesn't get to tinker around anymore,
Yeah.
Like at that level, you just don't. You're running a business. The fact that it's about SEO or search is secondary. It's just another department. I'd say it's interesting. I'm sure he does a lot of interesting stuff, but I'm sure it's bloody stressful as well.
Yeah. I hope he's got some good head up. Mind you, Alistair was going a little bit bald. He'll probably come back bald when he eventually decides to come back.
You should find out if he's ever coming back on holiday, Jim, and you should invite him to the show, and we can have a reunion.
Actually, we should get him down here. Actually, I've got 2 bottles of Jameson sitting up on my bar,
I'll have to come sometime, Jim.
Yeah, your move is next.
Yeah. Right, well, there's the end.
Yeah, I think that's it. Let me just click it to make sure. Yep, it is. It's thank you for watching time. Look, I see we still have eyes watching us, and we thank you for that. Your interest in what we do makes what we do worthwhile, and for that we're truly grateful. We'll be back at the same time next week to do this all again, but for now it's good night and thank you very much.